Ceann Comhairle. Ceann Comhairle, when I was about, I think I was about 8, I was on my first Take Back the Night march, and I went with my mother. And we chanted, and it stuck in my mind, no matter what we wear or where we go, yes means yes, and no means no. That's 40 years ago, give or take. So I've been on too many protests. I've been marching too many times. I've worn out too much shoe leather, not me personally, we have. We know what the issues are. We shouldn't still have to be on the streets. We shouldn't still have to be highlighting the epidemic of violence against women. We shouldn't keep having to tell our stories. We are sick and tired of telling our stories. We are sick and tired of taking that which happened to us and putting it into the public sphere and nearly begging for allies, for politicians to listen, for men to understand. We're just fed up with it, and that's one thing I have noticed in the last week. It's not that women are angry, but Jesus, yes, we're angry, but they're fed up, just really fed up. I talked to my mother, we are fed up at this stage, and we are fit to say enough is enough, but we know that we've said enough is enough too many times before. And the tragic killing of Aisling Murphy has sparked a national debate. From Belfast to Ballincollig and everywhere in between, we have seen women and men gather together and silently reflect on the loss of Aisling, on the loss of all women lost to violence, and the fact that many of us experience a very real fear on a daily basis. Ceann Comhairle, I like to run. I'm not very good at it, can't run very far, can't run very fast, but I do like to run. And when I go out, I am always careful, because I try, as a woman approaching 50 years of age, I try to not bring it on myself. Imagine that, before I leave the house. And I've spoken to my husband about this. This comes as a revelation. I know to good and decent men, this comes as an absolute revelation. But I check myself before I go, and I think, what am I doing to bring this on myself? That shouldn't happen. That's not personal to me. That's every woman before we go out. What are we wearing? Where are we going? Who's going to be there? How am I getting there? How am I getting home? All the time asking ourselves these questions, all the time with that little, and it's been spoken about here, that little mental checklist. Who's going to be there? Is it going to be safe? Is there anyone coming home in the taxi with me? I wonder, could I persuade my husband to stay up and drive into town and bring me home? Ceann Comhairle, I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm a grown woman. I am not a child, but I am afraid of being in the dark on my own or with someone behind me. That's just not acceptable. So Deputy Rabbitte is right, or Minister Rabbitte, my apologies, is right. We have to call it out when we see it, and that means all of us. I've worked most of my adult life in areas where they would say they're dominated by men, the trade union movement and indeed in politics. I have been subjected to sustained and crippling sexual harassment in a previous job, and when I raised concerns, I was told by my boss, "Sure, Louise, you're tougher than the men in here. What are you going on about?" And to my shame, I didn't say anything. I took it on the chin. I smiled because I thought, we're both in on the joke now, me and the boss. But it's not funny. I should have called it out, and we should always call it out. And to the men, to the good, decent men in the Oireachtas, I would ask you, how many of you can honestly say that you've never witnessed sexual harassment? You've never been present when a sexist or a misogynistic joke has been told? How many of you spoke up? And the most important question is, will you speak up now? Will you, when you hear the joke, when you hear the sentiment, when you see one of your colleagues being degraded, or someone from another political party, will you speak out? Will you call it for what it is? Will you stand up? Because if we don't stand up and acknowledge that violence against women happens because it happens in the culture that is created by people who don't call it out. We all received an email yesterday. It was circulated to all TDs, and I was struck by one line in it. It said, "Preventing men's violence against women starts with creating zero tolerance culture towards misogyny and sexism. That creates the context in which gender-based violence occurs, and that's why we have to call it out." And in the few seconds remaining to me, I will say, I have written to the Ceann Comhairle to ask that we will undertake bystander intervention training here. I think it's really important. I think we should be doing it, and I hope that that the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission will accede to that request. And finally, just to say, a lot of what's going to be discussed today will be triggering for women. The Women's Aid helpline is there. It's 1800 341 900. Women's Aid is funded 50% by charity. They do brilliant work, but 50% of the funding that they get, they have to fundraise themselves. And every shilling that they raise is time spent raising money when they should be helping women. So we do need to really reflect on that. Go on, Michael.